we're going to speak about water, and this will go tomorrow as well, 2 sessions. I don't want to lecture to you, that is not good, but I want to interact. You're free to ask questions at any time. Don't feel that I am set on a path from which I cannot deviate. If I say something which really doesn't make sense or is obscure, please alert me and I will change. Even if you don't ask any questions during this session, I certainly will ask you some. And if I do, it's not to embarrass you, it's just that we can go along together and share and relate to each other so that we all move along at the same speed. Although I haven't given you much time to think about it, if you had to provide a recipe or a set of instructions for making a mud man, M-U-D, a mud man, just from the normal elements, and I didn't know how to make a mud man and what proportions of things to put in the bucket to create my model mud man, what instructions would you give me, Peter? How to make a mud man, basic elements, proportions of things. I know I've caught you by surprise. Don't worry. All right. Damien, do you want to help Peter? How much? Some water and some mud. All right. How do I make this? What proportions? Yeah? Yes? 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 All right? Yes? Yes? Stir? Yes? All right, fair enough. 2 spades of earth, 500 mils of water, mix, stir, mold, put in a little sand, and there you have your mud man. And I think most of us would agree with that. From God's perspective, and of course he made man, what were his proportions of water and earth? Paulette? More water than earth. How much water are you made of as an adult human being? If I should analyze your body, what percentage of water would be in your body? 55%? 75%. 75 to 80% of water, and the rest is earth. Now suppose I took God's instructions and had 75% of water and 25% of earth, and I put it to stand. What would happen? Nothing. It's just a solution which has no form, no compactness, and it really would be a total disaster. And so you ask yourself, why is it that God made us with 75% of water and only a small bit of earth? Now, as an adult, what he did stands. I don't melt away. I'm really quite firm. And when you look at different parts of the body, let's take the brain, you know the size of my head. My brain is just a little smaller. It is very soft, very solid. I can cut it with a knife. And there are people I know, I've met them in North America and in some parts of the South Pacific, when they want to make a sandwich, they have the bread, they slice the brain, a sheep brain or a cow's brain, and they have slices of brain, and they put it between the sandwich, and they have a brain sandwich. I don't try that, but the thing is, the brain is solid enough to be sliced to make a sandwich, and yet, what percentage of the brain is water? Have a guess. Yes? 85% of the brain is water. Very watery, and yet in real life, it's quite solid enough to be cut. And my muscles, mine are not so hard, but yesterday I felt Errol's because he spends time at the gym. They're larger than mine, and he didn't have to flex the biceps. Just by looking at it and just touching it, it was as hard as a rock. What percentage of water are his muscles? 75 to 80%. What about my bone? Solid bone, my leg bone, because if I took my femur and knocked you over the head hard enough, it would knock you out and perhaps kill you. What percentage of bone is water? Yes? 40%. 40% of bone, and yet it is so strong. So God took 75% of water and made me and turned me into a masterpiece which is quite solid and not easy to melt. And in introducing this, I want to look at a statement from one very excellent author. And here she said, thinking of God's creation, man is God's workmanship, his masterpiece. In the creation of man, Jehovah has given a specimen of himself. This solution of 75% water and a little earth is actually a masterpiece of God's creation and a specimen of himself. It is a marvel that I, with so much water in me, could look like this. And when you look at your body, water really is everywhere. My brain is not only 85% water, but it swims in water. It is surrounded by water, and my spinal cord going down my back is surrounded by water. Around my lungs in the cage, there is water. My heart sits in a sack, in a little basket, and it is surrounded by water so that the heart can slip and slide around without any problem. My eyes are filled with water. My joints are filled with water. My blood is 94% water. There is water everywhere. And in the world, you know that the Earth's surface is 75% water. So water is such a common thing, very common. And yet God takes this common thing in all its abundance, and it is so common that most of us ignore it. Many here, I know, don't drink water. We just ignore it. And very few of us would pay hundreds of dollars for water because it's not worth it. It is so common, so commonplace. And yet, God made us using 75% water. There has to be something special about water and the functions of water in our body. And that is what I want to share with you today as we interact. Let's look at a cell. One of the 100,000 million billion trillion. 100 trillion cells in your body. Each cell is rather like a brick, and you construct the house of bricks, but each room is different, and each room has its special function. Nevertheless, they're all bricks and all cells, but each one specialized to do a particular job. One of these cells, 100 trillion, every cell is filled with water. Every cell is surrounded by water. And yet the water outside of these 100 trillion cells is not runny water. It's kind of a gel-like structure which produces stability. The blood that brings nutrients to the cell so that it performs its functions is 95% water. And you need water to take away the metabolic products, the toxins which are created within, and take it away for excretion. And you know that as we excrete through the kidneys, urine, that is water. Sweat, that is water. The lungs, every time I breathe out, that is water. When I defecate, I need water. So every avenue of excretion needs water in order to do its function. So water in the cell, water around, we need water to bring it to the cell, and we need water to get rid of waste. So water is everywhere, and without water, no cell can function. But I want to be even more precise and remind you that the cell membrane is not really a single wall like that. It really is a double wall. The cell membrane is a double-walled structure, and in the interval between the outer membrane and the inner membrane, what do you think is flowing there? Water. So there's actually a river of water flowing within the membrane itself, as well as water being everywhere else. So I want to emphasize the first fact. We are filled with water. Water is everywhere. And without water, the cells just cannot do its function. Now, how much water is in my body? When I die, and if somebody cremates me, how much will you have left of solids? Just a handful. You really couldn't hold me in your hand. But the solids in my body are easily held or put on the mantelpiece in a cup. So there's not much of me in terms of solid material. And what makes me me is all the water in my body, because if you look at my body in terms of weight, I weigh 160 pounds. And out of that 160 pounds, how many pounds of me is water? 150? Then I really wouldn't be me at all. 120 pounds of me is water. And so if you burned me and all that water evaporated, even from the solids which are left, the elements of water in it, when they have evaporated, I really come down to a small bowl of ashes. And so water plays a very important part in my body because there is so much of it. How much water do you think your body turns over each day? If you think of the function of these 100 trillion cells, the job they have to do, and they need water to do it, water in, water out, water bringing food, water taking things away, putting all the work of these cells together, how much water in terms of cups, a normal cup or glass, how many glasses do they turn over each day in order to do their job every 24 hours? Have a guess. 10 cups, all right? 10 cups. Any advance? 80? 80. Any advance? Got to jump higher than that. We haven't even begun. 6,000. You've got to do better than that. 8,000, not even near. 40,000 cups a day, turnover. If the water in our body were not recycled, we would need to put in 40,000 cups a day to get the body to do its work. And even the kidney, which takes urine away, and it only takes about 1.5 liters of urine every day. The amount of urine a normal adult passes each day is this bottle full. Supposing, of course, you're drinking normal quantities. Many of us pass less urine than that, and we'll talk about the implications of that. But a normal kidney will excrete this bottle full of urine under normal conditions. Yet the kidney each day filters 180 of these bottles. That's the amount of fluid that passes through the kidney every 24 hours. But only 8 cups, 1.5 liters, only 8 cups go out. The rest is conserved and recycled through the body and distributed to my cells to keep its work going. And so the body was made to recycle water in order that we would not have to drink 40,000 cups a day. So it recycles the water, and in a sense you say, I wish it would recycle everything and we didn't have to pass urine. But God has allowed me to pass urine, and when I pass this quantity, seeing that my body cannot make water, doesn't. The most it makes from its various chemical processes is about 1 cup. That's all it makes every day. But every day I lose 1.5 liters. And since my body cannot make water, then I must replace what I lose each day to keep my body in water balance. Because only as the water balance is preserved can my cells function effectively to do their job. Now, how much do I lose each day? From my urine, I lose about 1.5 liters if all is well. In a temperate climate, I don't sweat much. But even when I'm not sweating, my skin is losing water, for that is what keeps my skin soft and it doesn't dry up. So I lose water even when I am not sweating, and we call that insensible loss. When I sweat, that is a little extra. From my lungs, I lose some water, and when I go to the bathroom, if I didn't lose water when I went to the bathroom, then I would be defecating rocks and stones. And those have terrible effects on one's body, and many patients come to the hospital because they pass rocks, or the rocks are so hard that they cannot pass the rocks, and as the rocks passes through the anus, it tears, it destroys. It forces the veins within the rectum to be pushed out because I have to generate so much pressure in order to get the rocks out that the veins come out as bunches of grapes or piles or hemorrhoids. It's not a disease. It's just because I have to generate so much pressure that I disturb my normal anatomy and sends my rectal veins outside into the atmosphere where they were not designed to be. That's what happens if I have no water in the feces. And so I need to have a constant loss of water so that my body can function well, and I must replace all of this every day in order to keep my water balance intact. If I don't replace that 1.5 liters, altogether, this amounts to about 2.5 liters a day. That is my loss. Every day, an adult loses this. The fatter I am, the more water I lose. The smaller I am as a child, I lose less water. But I'm speaking now of a normal adult who needs to replace the body loss with 2.5 liters a day. Those who do not do this will inevitably end up in the hospital. Not in a week or two or a year, but after a few years, you are going to turn up. And whatever you turn up with, it represents the bulk of diseases which fill the medical textbooks, and for 90% of these diseases, there is no knowledge as to what causes it. We call them diseases. Etiology, causation, unknown. And I can go through the list. Even in my specialty, diabetes, cause unknown. Arthritis, cause unknown. Ulcerative colitis, cause unknown. And I can go through the list. Lupus, cause unknown. Peptic ulcer, cause unknown. Most cancers, cause unknown. So we don't know. But the important thing is that when we don't maintain our body balance with water, and our cells are forced to go into an emergency survival mode to keep alive. Once the body begins to do that, some things happen to the rest of my body. When my body is dry and my water balance is not intact, then my brain has to decide, first of all, conserve water. Then it has to say, the water that I conserve, I now have, my brain says, distribute the water in order of priority. Those parts that need it to keep alive, give it the bulk of the water. Those parts that we can do without, for the time being, put them on rations. And so in distributing the water, it then decides to ration the water supply. And that rationing is temporary until the body's loss of water is made good, and then everything can revert to normal. But if after a while the rationing of the water still meets with no changes in my water intake, the brain, which receives the bulk of my limited water, because the brain has to do the thinking, the brain has to make the decisions. If the brain isn't receiving its 85% of water, then the rest of the body will suffer. So whatever the water balance in the body, the brain has priority. So it takes the bulk of it by fair means or foul. And then it says, all right, now that I'm in a position to think and to make decisions, I feel that from now on, I will now destroy those parts of the body which has become a burden, in order to keep them going when they are functioning so inefficiently, and the body is not benefiting from this expenditure of nutrients and water. Cut it off. Kill it. So the body says, all right, I will now destroy. And the body's immune system has a marvelous way of deciding who to kill, what cells to kill. And it does kill. And then as it kills that part of the body, it then breaks it down, takes back from the dead tissue those things which it can utilize for the rest of the body, and excretes those parts that can be gotten rid of. Question? All right, an example. Let's take the joint. What is in my joint? When you bend your knee like that, what do you think is in it? Yes? Jelly-like, almost. It is like more like oil. Like oil. It's water. It's just water, oil, but it is viscous and sticky so that it can lubricate the joint very well. When you look at your joint, here is my femur, my leg bone. Here is my shin bone. The two bones don't really meet because they have to have spaces in which to move. But these bones are joined together by ligaments, and that is the capsule of my knee. And these ligaments hold the bones together so they don't fall apart. But the ends of the bone are covered by a very soft structure. For those who eat chicken bones, when you break the knee and you look at the ends, what do you see? Yeah. Cartilage, good. This is cartilage. It is made up of cells which are called chondrocytes, cartilage cells. What color is it? White. Why? Very simple, nothing scientific. Why is it white? Yes? One full of water, but so is my muscle. And if you cut my muscle, it's a different color. Now, calcium makes things tough, and calcium usually solidifies, so my bone is really filled with calcium. So no calcium, but you're getting close. There is no blood supply. Cartilage has no blood. It is bloodless. But yet it is living, because the cartilage is made up of cells called chondrocytes, and each of those is doing a job. But each chondrocyte is 95% water. And because they are filled with water, they exude water through the cartilage surface into the joint space, and so the joint becomes filled with water. Very clear. And that produces lubrication, and that fluid recirculates into the cartilage, and so there's a kind of river there. Now, where do these chondrocytes get their nutrition from, seeing that there is no blood supply? From the marrow in the bone. Right up here is the bone marrow, in the middle of my leg, nothing much down towards the end. And as my circulation brings a blood supply to the bone marrow, here is a capillary, an artery, coming in through the hard bone, which has to create a canal to let the artery come through. The blood now enters and supplies my bone marrow, for the blood is bringing oxygen and nutrients to my bone marrow to make blood. For this is where my blood is made. But there is no marrow down here. And so, since there's no marrow down here, through the walls of my blood vessel, under the blood pressure, water trickles out through the membrane of my blood vessel within the bone marrow, and the water travels down, bringing all the nutrients in blood except blood. It doesn't bring red blood cells, and it doesn't bring white blood cells. So the nutrients come down and feed the cartilage cells, and they maintain their production of water so that my knees, when I bend, do not make a grating sound. Now, if I should look at the knees of some of you today, irrespective of age, and put my hand on your knee and say, do this, I would feel a rough, grating vibration under my hand, which is absent from the knees of healthy children and healthy adults. And where is that grating sound coming from? It happens because the surfaces of my cartilage have become rough. Parts have been damaged, parts have disappeared, and so when the knees rub together, it's like two graters rubbing against each other. Whereas in a normal knee, when they rub together, it's like two blocks of ice, which smoothly run over each other, because in between two blocks of ice, you have a layer of water which does not allow any sound or any friction or generating any heat. But if the water is absent, because the cells are not functioning, because they are not getting enough nutrients, because my water supply through the bloodstream is inadequate, and because it's inadequate, the bone marrow cells take all the water from there and send very little down here. Because it is important that I make blood cells for the rest of my body rather than try to maintain a joint working smoothly. So the body says, I can dispense with the joint. So, with poor nutrition, because there is dehydration, so very little water carrying nutrients reach here, the chondrocytes die. And when one dies, they cannot be replaced by new cartilage cells from the end of the bone, for there is no nutrition to make new cells grow to repair the lost cartilage here. And so my cartilage might end up looking like that. A rough surface rather than a smooth surface. Now, in time, that will be worn away, and after a while, you may have no cartilage left at all. And so you now have bone rubbing against bone. Now that is very painful, especially when the surface of the bone becomes rough. And then now, as I begin to have my cartilage worn away and my bone wears away, there are nerve fibers coming in from my body and supplying the cartilage. Very fine nerve fibers, and the endings of these nerve fibers are sensitive to pain. That's why my knees begin to hurt me. Now, what is it that wakes up these pain fibers to say, Don, your knee is in trouble? Since the blood supply to my bone is inadequate, because my blood vessel passing through this hole cannot expand to bring in more blood, because this hole is made of bone and the walls cannot expand, then what happens is that the blood vessels which are going to my capsule, those tissues around my joints, those expand to try and bring in more blood in an effort to help my cartilage. Now, as this expands, it releases immune cells which make my joint inflamed, for inflammation is associated with redness, more blood supply. And as I get more blood supply, my immune cells arrive and release certain chemicals called cytokines. And some of these cytokines induce and stimulate the pain receptors in my joint. As those cytokines circulate in my joint and stimulate the nerve endings, then my nerves send a message to my brain saying, pain, something is wrong with the joint. I need some rectification of the problem. But because I don't understand my body's language, and because I don't understand water, I say, oh, my knee is hurting. Arthritis, not bad yet, but it's hurting, I can't walk. What shall I do? Let me take an aspirin. And when I take the aspirin, I will then kill the pain fibers so that I no longer feel pain. And so the cartilage cells remain bereft of water. The inflammatory process gets worse. My joint swells up. It becomes red. It is very tender because it is stimulating the cells with the release of cytokines to say, I want water. If I get water, then I won't have to bother to cause this inflammatory reaction. But when the aspirins don't work anymore, then I get a stronger analgesic and I add it to that to kill them a little bit more. Now, because I feel no pain, because I'm filled with the drug, I keep running. I run marathons. I go to work. I dig in the garden. It never occurs to me to rest so that the joint can become better. So the more I work on it and the more pressure I put on it, the more I wear away my cartilage. Just this little bit. It's fine. Thanks, Peter. Gradually, the cartilage wears away, and one day I find that my cartilage really is almost non-existent. And I've developed arthritis. It's not the only cause, I'm saying, but that is one of the basic mechanisms. And by the time it dawns on me that none of the tablets have cured my arthritis, because there is no tablet that can cure arthritis. There is no medicine that can cure arthritis. The knee knows how to cure itself if we listen to the language. And by the time the cartilage is gone, we now have irreversible osteoarthritis, and the cartilage cannot be regenerated. And so the body says, you know, it was worthwhile sacrificing the knee and diverting whatever water and blood we had to the more important parts. And it is better to be alive with a healthy brain without a knee rather than to have beautiful knees, but you're dead. That's how the body reasons. For the body has to make decisions for itself. And if our intelligence is not directing the brain just takes over and does what it thinks it ought to do if we are not in the riding seat of our brain. So this mechanism of sacrificing a part of the body in order to keep alive happens right throughout the body, not just in the knee, but in all the organs, but each has a different priority. And little by little over the years, the knees go, then the kidneys go, and something else goes. And you end up in the hospital with 4 different diseases for which we have no knowledge what the etiology is. But it goes right back to basic principles. Coming back, what are we saying now? We have to drink every day the amount of water we lose in order to maintain water balance so that each cell can do its job well because they are adequately supplied with water. Now, why should this be? Let's talk a little first, have a very brief overview of some of the things that can happen, and tomorrow I'll go over them in more detail when you come again. But just a brief overview. As you walk along the street, you see pebbles, stones. Do you expect to find stones in your body? No, but you do. And sometimes we take out stones as big as this, and sometimes larger. Where do I find stones in your body? All right, in the kidney. Here now we have a kidney. And the urine has to flow down the ureter and then enter the bladder and then come out through the urethra as urine. That's the other kidney. When the kidney, whose job is to conserve water, reabsorbs all the water back into the blood in order to maintain the body's hydration, it can hardly afford to send out too much urine. So whatever waste it has to send out, which is chiefly urea and uric acid, urea comes from the breakdown of protein. And by the way, an adult only needs 50 grams of protein a day to keep well. That's enough meat that fits into a matchbox. And why do you need only a matchbox? Because you are no longer growing. You've stopped growing a long time ago. So there's no point giving yourself growing protein if you've stopped growing. And you only need enough to maintain minimal losses from skin, from hair, from inside the intestines when some cells are lost. That's all you need. A little bit, with a little bit more to make you feel better. But when you eat half a chicken, and the body cannot store protein, doesn't store it, for it doesn't need it, then the body says, all this is coming into me, what am I going to do with it? I cannot store it. Therefore, the best thing to do, you destroy it. And so you break down the protein and you form urea, and the amount of urea goes up in your blood. For that is the way in which it is released in the urine. Now, you've heard of people dying of kidney failure. What do they call it medically when they die of kidney failure? Uremia. What does that mean, uremia? Uremia. Ia in medicine means in the blood. And ure means urea or urine. So uremia means urine in the blood. So if the urine cannot get out and remains in the blood because the kidneys cannot get rid of it because there's a stone blocking the flow of urine, the urine goes back to the blood, and when it increases to a certain level, it kills you. Urine in high amounts is a poison, largely because of the presence of urea. Now, urea is necessary for certain body functions, but when there's too much, it will kill you. Yesterday, we talked about brain function. As urea rises, it changes the chemical environment of the brain cells, and your behavior changes. You become confused, you become demented, you don't recognize your relatives, you do strange things, and finally, you lapse into unconsciousness and death. So the body has to get rid of urea, which comes from excess protein. And so the body breaks down the excess chicken you eat and sends it out through the kidneys. Now, uric acid also comes from the breakdown of cells. The DNA in the cells, and that produces uric acid. That also has to come out because it has no place in the body. But if the uric acid cannot come out because there's a block, then the uric acid rises in the blood, and when it rises, the uric acid has to find places to go. Some comes out in the sweat, but the sweat glands can't get rid of all the uric acid, so it finds itself in other places, and when it finds itself in other places, what do you come to the doctor with? Gout. Because the uric acid goes into the joint space and forms crystals. And now you have a joint, a knee joint, filled with uric acid crystals, when it ought to be filled with joint fluid, which is a smooth, viscous fluid. It doesn't want crystals. And so when the crystals go in it, because it has nowhere to go, it excites an inflammatory condition of the joint capsule. Blood comes in, releases the cytokines in a response to the irritation by these crystals in an effort to get rid of it. So the joint swells up, it becomes very red, it becomes tender, the pain is acute because the uric acid crystals are there, and that is gout. Now, why did you get gout? Because your knee went wrong? No. Because you produced gout in your own body. Now, when your body is dehydrated and the kidney filters the blood, the brain says to the kidney, we cannot afford to produce so much urine. We don't have enough water on board. So pull back all the fluid you can afford to and only leave the absolute minimum to get rid of the urea and the uric acid. In other words, make the urine very concentrated.
This may sound like a stupid question, but uric acid is very often prevalent, or gout is prevalent in people who imbibe alcohol to a large extent. Now, they are taking more fluid than normal, and so it almost sounds like a contradiction. But
excellent, all right, excellent. Gout is the disease of the wealthy. Wines and meats. Poor people don't have gout. Now we can understand the meat, which is protein, producing urea, but if the wines is really fluid, and later on I'll tell you that's a mistake. Fluid, water in wine is no longer water. Water in sodas is no longer water. Water in coffee and tea is no longer water because the water molecules are already married to the substances in the tea and in the wine. What is it in wine, although it's filled with water, that produces uric acid? Wine is filled with purines. That is a chemical which is found in the cells, in the nucleus of each cell, purines. And when purines are broken down, they produce uric acid. Now, wine is filled with purines. And so the more wine you drink, the more uric acid you produced, therefore the more predisposed you are to gout. Now, when the body is saying, now kidney, pull back water, I cannot afford the luxury of forming nice urine, concentrate it. And so the kidney obeys, concentrates the urine, and sends out the waste in the minimum amount of water. And how do you know when your urine is concentrated? What does it look like? Very yellow or deep orange. You know you're in trouble. What does it feel like as it is coming out through the urethra? Burns. It's warm. It's filled with acid. It's warm. What does it smell like? Not good. Not good. Not good. A very unpleasant odor because it is concentrated. Now, when you have a concentrated solution, let's say here is a glass that is filled with salt water. We take some water from the sea and we put it in the sun, and the sun's rays evaporate. When you have evaporated enough water, what appears at the bottom? Crystals of salt. That is what happens in the kidney. As the urine is concentrated, so crystals begin to settle out in the kidney, in the body of the kidney. And those crystals coalesce, and in the tubules of the kidney, they form stones. And sometimes these stones have very jagged edges. And they now try to pass down this ureter to get to your bladder, and the ureter is very small. So they become stuck somewhere along here or right here when they can't get through the tiny hole. And when they're stuck, no further urine can pass. Urine is made, tries to come down, it can't come, so the ureter dilates. And you get a large ureter filled with urine. And after a while, the kidney swells up with back urine. And then the kidney can't filter anymore, so you go into kidney failure. And then the doctor takes out the kidney and robs you of how many rand for a nephrectomy? A lot of rand. And you lose a kidney at the same time. And you think you gain, but you've lost. All because of a stone. Why did the stone come? Because you failed to drink water. Therefore, the body said, I am desperate. I will sacrifice a kidney in order to keep alive. That's not a disease that came in from the outside. There is no mystery things coming in from the outside except germs. This disease was the body's response to self-induced dehydration. And when you keep the water flowing through the body and through the kidney produces lots of clear urine, no smell, no burning, and no stones. Now, when the urine is concentrated, sometimes the stone may come through and come in the bladder. And then in the bladder, it has a nice place to grow, and stones can grow bigger. And then sometimes they try to come out. Can you imagine what it feels like to have a stone coming out through a tiny urethra? It is excruciating. I have never felt it. But I have been in the presence of patients who are trying to pass a stone. And I feel it for them, even though it's not in me. Not a nice pain. It is one of the most excruciating pains that you can feel. Now, when you don't have water flowing through and washing out the kidneys and the bladder, the walls of the ureter are dry. The walls of the bladder are dry. Therefore, it is a fertile field for germs. For the germs on the outside now begin to walk up the urethra. Now, it is much easier for them to walk up a woman's urethra than a man, because it is so much shorter. So, easy passage. And then they go into the bladder, these germs, where they find a nice pool of concentrated urine, which has in things that they grow on. And they multiply, and then now you develop a cystitis. Pain when you pass urine, fever, always wanting to pass urine, and so you've developed a cystitis. Then the germs find the ureter, and they begin to walk up. and they get into the kidney, and then you develop a nephritis or a pyelonephritis. Then they go through the kidney tissue and into the blood vessels in the kidney and find their way into the blood, and then you develop a septicemia, germs in the blood. And the blood goes everywhere carrying these germs which came from the outside, and then you die. Why? Imagine a stream, a fast-flowing stream, and a stream just trickling along. When you look at the poor-flowing stream filled with algae, green and brown and mucky and smelly and not at all healthy. But if you have a fast-flowing river, you can drink from it, because germs have no time to settle and overpower the water. And that is what happens when your urethra and your ureter and your kidneys are not flowing with water. You become susceptible to more infections. Women who have a high incidence of cystitis really need not have it at all if they maintained a free flow of water. And the same is true for men, although they have cystitis to a much lesser degree. So this is an example of what happens when we fail to replace the water we lose, 2.5 liters, through these avenues. You cannot stop yourself sweating. Whether you like it or not, you're going to lose water through your skin. You can't minimize the loss of water through your lungs, for every time you breathe out, water goes with the carbon dioxide. You cannot stop yourself passing urine. You must have urine, otherwise you'll die. And you cannot, or you should not want to stop yourself defecating in a gentle way. God designed it to be gentle, but for many of us it is highly traumatic, and it should not be that way at all. So since we cannot stop these natural ways of water loss, and since our body can only make 1 cup of water a day, it is vital that we replace the 2.5 liters we lose in regular amounts throughout the day to keep the water levels topped up. For when the water levels go down and there is no move to reverse the rationing, then the next step, and the body has a lot of patience, but when it reaches a certain point, he says, I cannot cope any longer. I must now sacrifice something so that my brain may get its fair supply of water to function and to make decisions. Question?
Suppose I want to make up for now knowing that I've not been having my 2.5 and I try and sneak in 3 to 4 liters of water. Can I make up for what I've done, the damage?
All right. Can I make up? If I have not been obedient and I have neglected my water intake, can I make up by putting in 3 or 5 liters? The body cannot handle all the water loss in one go. For the 2.5 liters you lose, you didn't lose it in 5 minutes. You lost it over 24 hours. So there's no point taking 5 liters in one go. It will all come out again. For the kidneys, if it is suddenly flooded with 5 liters of water, it says, well, you know, the kidney doesn't know that the rest of the body is dry. But when the kidney feels all of this coming in, it says, now I'm flooded. I don't need this amount. And so it sends most of it out. So you have to put back in the body on a regular basis throughout the 24 hours and allow time for the water in the blood to find its way into those cells which are in your fingertips, in the extreme parts of your body. But it is a good thing to increase your water intake so that you can make up Fill up the empty spaces until it levels off, and then you can go back to your 2.5 liters. But don't take it all in one go. But you certainly need to increase your supply. Question?
Can I ask you about this grape cure business? I did it.
The grape
cure.
Grape cure.
In other words, I lived on grapes only
Yes.
and hot water
Mm-hmm.
for a couple of weeks
For the cure of,
to just clean my whole body out.
all right.
Did that do me damage? Because that's acid, isn't it?
All right, now it is acid, but not the kind of acid we need to be frightened of. The beauty about grape juice and other fruits is that apart from the water it contains and the healthful sugars, sugar is not always a bad thing because sugar is in fruits. It all depends how we eat it and in what quantities. But it contains a lot of antioxidants. And the most important antioxidants in grape juice is an antioxidant called resveratrol. Resveratrol. Now, antioxidants have a very important role in the body. And I'll quickly explain that. I'll take it up in detail another time, but I'll quickly tell you. Within the body, we often produce, and we do produce, some compounds called free radicals. The body makes free radicals. And basically, a free radical is a compound like this, or an oxygen molecule, which has gained an extra electron. An electron is a negative charge. And when oxygen gains an extra electron, or the hydroxyl radical, that you recall is a part of water, H, hydrogen, plus OH, that is water. When that part of water gains an extra electron, it is converted into a free radical. Now, a free radical is a highly explosive scavenger. It is like an electric spark. Now, electrons cannot live alone. They must have a partner. And so this free radical, or this one, goes around the body trying to find another electron so that the two can join together, and then it isn't reactive anymore. But to find that electron, this free radical has to steal it from a cell. Any cell in the body, a knee joint, the blood vessel surfaces, the heart, anywhere. But once it steals that electron, then this cell from which it was stolen now becomes damaged. And if you keep stealing an electron every time from my kidney, today, next year, I feel nothing. But if you do this thing for about 10 years, then one day I will turn up with kidney disease of unknown etiology, unknown cause. Now, my body produces free radicals in order to use the free radicals to kill germs that enter my body. And so a part of my immune defense system is the presence of free radicals, which are made within my cell in a structure called the mitochondria. Mitochondria generate, among other things, free radicals to serve my defense system. If I have too many free radicals, then I'll damage a lot of my body. If I have just the right amount, I will kill only the germs which enter. Now, how do I get rid of free radicals if I have too many, if I eat the wrong foods? And of course, most free radicals come from cooked fat, cooked animal fat. When you take saturated fats, cholesterol, which is found only in animal food, and you subject them to high temperatures by frying and barbecue, then the hot temperature changes the LDL cholesterol, changes the structure, and turns them into free radicals. And then when I eat my pound of barbecued steak, I just set on fire throughout my body all these free radicals which do their damage. Now, the only way to fight the free radicals is to now have another kind of chemical called antioxidants. Now, free radicals do their damage by oxidizing my cells and killing them. But if I take an antioxidant, this antioxidant will fight against my free radicals and destroy them, neutralize them, so that I don't do any damage to my cells. Now, antioxidants are only found in plants. None are found in flesh. And there are no free radicals in plants, only antioxidants. So the flesh is filled with free radicals and no antioxidants, and the plants are filled with antioxidants and no free radicals. So now, if I really want to minimize damage to my body, I will eat a diet free from free radicals. I will eat all kinds of antioxidants which will save me from the free radicals produced by radiation, from the chemicals in the air, from the chemicals which I can't help because they're all around me, and that produces damage. And as I get older, I produce more free radicals, so my plants will fight against those and keep me in health. If I want to shorten my life, I will eat lots of free radicals. And I do die earlier. And even if I don't die earlier, I do not enjoy life as much. I don't, because I become disabled. And I'm living with the doctor all the time and taking lots of tablets. Now, if I want to settle for the mean, I will take equal quantities of free radicals and equal quantities of antioxidants. And now I will not live as long as those who eat just antioxidants, but I will live longer than those who just eat free radicals. Now, grape juice has resveratrol, which is a powerful antioxidant and reverses a lot of damage done by free radicals. That is what I know about grape juice, apart from the nutrients that it contains. If it cleanses me in any other way, I do not really know, because it has no fiber, therefore it will not necessarily for skin.
The skins of the
Yeah, I see. Oh, I thought you meant the grape juice. Yes, the skins produce the fiber, which can also cleanse my intestines, because the cellulose, which is not digested, allows my colon to empty. But later on, when we talk about diet, I will take up that subject more precisely. There was another question, and then I come.
Can you tell if you're having enough water by the color of your urine?
If you're having enough, yes. Anytime you see that your urine is not clear, all right. All right. It is true that some people, when they eat beetroot contains a pigment, a xanthine, a methyl xanthine, a pigment that comes out in the urine and comes out in the feces as well. Some antibiotics, some tablets come out in the urine, some vitamins color the urine, tetracycline colors the urine, but generally, if you're not on those special things, your urine ought to be a very mild lemon yellow, very mild lemon. But once it becomes yellow and orange, you know that your body is dry. And one should endeavor to keep one's urine as clear as possible. Don't be fanatical about it, but You know, if you happen to be in a place where you cannot drink for 6 hours, your urine will be yellow. That's all right. The body can stand a little emergency, but when it is constantly yellow, then your body will react. First here.
Could you kind of tell me where else does the uric acid crystals tend to
deposit? Uric acid crystals deposits not only in joints, but it deposits in the skin and in the ears. And when those deposits are found, we call them tophi. Many tophi, one tophus. And as it deposits in the ears and forms these bumps, then they ulcerate the skin over the collection of uric acid, and you form sores. And then they burst and the uric acid comes out. Or they collect in the skin and you form these big lumps, which are very tender because they destroy the skin and allow the skin to ulcerate. So skin and joints are the main parts. Yes?
2 questions. Is there ever a problem of drinking too much water?
Is there a problem in drinking too much water? For most people, no. But for some people whose water, their thirst or their water conservation mechanism in the brain are not quite right and cannot eliminate fast enough, for certain hormones are deficient, then they can retain water and their brain can become overhydrated and they can lose consciousness. But that happens only rarely. And even for normal people, there really is no point in drinking too much water because you do lose extra sodium from the kidneys if you are passing too much urine.
Yeah, so related to that is there a normal sort of interval with which you should be needing to go to the bathroom? You know, if you're drinking water properly.
Yes.
I find it, when I start drinking water, I really got to go very often. It becomes almost inconvenient.
All right. Now, if you've not been on a water drinking program and you begin drinking water, you will go very frequently because your body has not yet adapted. The body says, all right, I have been on this norm for the time being. I'm running on a slow water supply. Suddenly, there is an overabundance, but I don't know how long it will last. Therefore, I will not stop my rationing yet until I am certain that I can depend on this water supply. And over time, as it becomes accustomed to it, the cell will readapt, and therefore your passing of urine will become less frequent. And that is what will happen for somebody who is just changing.
I just want to get back to 2 questions, both on free radicals and the
Oxidants?
antioxidants.
Uh-huh.
I drink a lot of green tea.
Yes. Yes.
I was told that produces a lot of free radicals.
Yes.
So to combat that, I then drink a lot of green tea. Now, you mentioned in the issue of wine.
Yes.
That once the combination it changes the composition as such that it is no longer water.
Yes.
Is that true of green tea?
Yes.
That drinking green tea and a lot of that also is no longer water.
All right. If it is just green tea without any sugar or milk, just green tea. Green tea now, just by itself, contains a fair amount of water. But the problem with green tea is that it's filled with caffeine. Now, caffeine, which green tea do you mean? The normal green tea? Oh, that is not caffeine. Oh, I see. All right. I thought you were talking of the English green tea or the Indian green tea. Not that. Okay. All right. The normal ones now, yes, it has a fair amount of water. Certainly the chemical substances, the good things in it, take up water space. Let me illustrate. If you go to the sea and you bathe in these clothes, when you come home, what do you need to clean them to remove the salt? Free water. For the free water will unite with the salt molecules and remove them. But if you wash them in more salt water, you remove nothing. If you wash them in orange juice, you remove nothing. For the water molecules are married to the things in orange juice, and so you have no free water to get rid of these things. And what the body really needs to cleanse itself is free water, unbound to anything. The different things we drink have different levels of free water. So green tea will not be as bad as drinking chocolate or tea with sugar and milk. So, but it is not as good as water.
When you read the Bible, Jesus says, like, when you fast, fasting, by that sentence, it seems to imply that there will be a time when Christians need to fast. And it seems that the original practice was no water, no food. What do you say about that?
All right, now this is the big thing. Now, what I may have to say here now, remember, this is half the water study. The other half is tomorrow. Even without questions, there are more things to be said about water which will help to understand, and that's a biggish segment of this. And my allotted time has gone. 8:30, it is now 8:25, and I really must be obedient in case I'm not asked to speak again. Tomorrow, I will continue from here and give you more thoughts on water, so it will both answer your question and bring up more questions which we have not touched on yet. What about gallstones in the gallbladder? What about peptic ulcers, for which we don't know the etiology? What does water have to do with that? What about headaches? What about psychological disturbances? What happens with our water balance? And we'll continue those things tomorrow with your questions. Thank you for listening tonight, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.